Welcome back. You're watching World Talks, and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. On Wednesday, Karol Nawrocki was sworn in as the President of Poland, marking the start of his five-year term. Since his first day in office, he voiced his Euroscepticism and set the scene for a difficult cohabitation with the current government. But what more can Poland expect from its new president in terms of domestic politics? Is a new period of challenges on the horizon when it comes to cooperation between the president and Donald Tusk's government? Renata Mieńkowska-Norkiene, political scientist from the University of Warsaw, joins me to answer these questions, or at least to get closer to finding these answers. Thank you so much for joining me on the program. What a time to be discussing the future.
Thank you for having invited me.
Thank you. The future of Polish politics. So let's jump in. So let's start with day number one. We've heard that President Nawrocki made a decision to make his way to Kalisz, a destination for his first regional visit, with a focus of reviving the original CPK, the Central Transport Hub Plan. What does this reveal about his political strategy and priorities for shaping Poland's internal development agenda?
Well, of course, he's continuing the grand projects of the Law and Justice. So this shows quite clearly that he's going to stick to the agenda of Law and Justice, which was disturbed by the elections of 2023. Well, I don't think it's actually something very different from what this government is also planning, because as far as I have heard, and I think we are all aware of that, Donald Tusk was supposed to continue the CPK project. It's just that he wanted to do it his own way as a prime minister. And here, what we can now experience as regards Karol Nawrocki's plans and his first steps, it resembles actually the prime ministership rather than actually being a president. So it seems that this cohabitation may actually mean that a Prime Minister Donald Tusk will have to compete on this Polish political scene with a president that will pretend to be a prime minister as well. And here we may have lots of tensions. I would even say that these tensions may now, for 2 or slightly more than 2 years, mark the Polish political scene, Polish political agenda. There will be tension, there will be competition or pieces of competition which might not serve the polls, but rather plans to win the elections in 2027. Karol Nawrocki may try to win them for Law and maybe for Law and Justice and Konfederacja together, because he's not a big enemy of Konfederacja as well. And Donald Tusk will obviously try to win the elections for the currently governing coalition.
You mentioned winning the election for the current opposition, but what about something that some of our experts mentioned here on TVP World before, since the swearing in of the new president, about having the parliamentary elections actually take place ahead of 2027, so before the actual time when they were scheduled? Do you think that's a possibility that could take place?
May happen, of course. Of course, now in Poland, everything is possible. And I'm afraid in these really hard times of this hard cohabitation, it may happen due to the fact that Donald Tusk may try to govern by being tough on the president as well, but also on those people who were responsible for de-democratization during the Law and Justice's or United Rights government. However, it can be very difficult, exactly due to the fact that Karol Nawrocki will use both his pardon right as well as his initiative, decision-making initiative, but also vetoes, obviously, and sending laws, a project of legal acts to the Constitutional Court, which is still in the hands of the Law and Justice's nominees. So I would say that this can be very tough. And here, Donald Tusk might might be actually made to make some decisions about also shortening the term. Maybe it's not going to be Donald Tusk who will decide, but Karol Nawrocki. Let's not forget that here the president has some competences of shortening the term of the parliament in budgetary cases. So if he does not approve the budget and if there are some problems with the budget, he might do it. So of course, within those tensions, there might be so that Jarosław Kaczyński will find a proper moment for shortening the term, and he will use the president as a tool to do it simply. But it can also be the opposite. It can be so that Donald Tusk will try to find the proper moment and maybe having some information or pieces of information which may be in his favor as regards shortening the term, he may decide that he is unable to govern. Lots of things are possible, but I would be very cautious about stating that it will happen immediately, because I think that Donald Tusk will still try to achieve some kind of first orientation of how to deal with Karol Nawrocki. Karol Nawrocki will definitely have very good advisors in communication. That's for sure. We can already see who will be in the president's chancellery, and these are all specialists in the field of communication, internet communication. So Karol Nawrocki may have a strong public support because of those specialists who will surround him.
Public presence.
And therefore, for Donald Tusk, it will be a very hard cooperation, or cohabitation rather, because who knows if we will have any cooperation at all.
You mentioned Jarosław Kaczyński, who is the leader of the right-wing opposition in Poland as of now. And it seems to be the case that President Nawrocki is starting to emerge as the leader, maybe not a leader of the right wing, but sort of a prominent figure when it comes to the right wing in Poland. And according to some sources, this could be a cause for concern for Mr. Kaczyński, the current leader of the opposition. What do you think this means for the dynamic within the right wing of the Polish political spectrum?
Yes, it's a very good question, because indeed we can see that there are some journalists and also specialists that Karol Nawrocki might become a separate figure on the political scene, and he may get independent of Jarosław Kaczyński. I'd like to warn all those people against this kind of thinking, because first and foremost, even if Karol Nawrocki is a strong character and strong personality, and he might also opt for a stronger cooperation with Konfederacja, this is not necessarily what Jarosław Kaczyński expects, but it's Jarosław Kaczyński who will have the budget for a possible second term of Karol Nawrocki as a president. And let's not forget that lots of things may happen if Karol Nawrocki goes too far and he reaches a threshold of law breaking. Obviously, if he loses the second term, he may become a scapegoat for Jarosław Kaczyński as well. Moreover, it's Konfederacja that also positions itself a little bit outside of Law and Justice, and this is the strategy that will gain votes for Konfederacja. Konfederacja voters do not want to have Konfederacja as a Law and Justice beast, so I wouldn't say that it will be that easy. Therefore, I'm more than sure, I would say even, that Karol Nawrocki will stick to the agenda which will be pushed forward by Jarosław Kaczyński. Karol Nawrocki will simply be one of his tools, maybe with a slight, let's say, area of autonomy, but only in those aspects which will not be that much interesting for Jarosław Kaczyński, but definitely nothing more.
When we look at Mr. Nawrocki, we definitely see that he would like to have this sort of a shift from the negative power of a president to a positive power. And one of the tools and the elements of his agenda apparently is the changes that he wants to introduce by introducing a new constitution with a deadline by 2030. How likely is that to take place, do you think? And what would have to happen for that constitution to be changed by 2030?
Well, of course, a sufficient condition for changing the constitution would be winning the forthcoming parliamentary elections by a majority which would be able to change the constitution. And of course, we cannot exclude that Law and Justice and the Confederation would get one. Therefore, Karol Nawrocki might here try to be the one who somewhat connects those ambitions of justice as the Confederation. It is the plan that he might try to pursue, and he might try to then implement this right-wing agenda. But let's not forget that this wouldn't mean a constitution for all the Poles. Okay, this is let's be honest. I mean, Karol Nawrocki has been half of Poland, half of the society. Of course, he gains social trust, and this is pretty visible. But it's also due to the fact that there are some hopes put in him that he will be different from Andrzej Duda, that he may try to get some compromises. But at the end of the day, it's not entirely the case. He's just a president of half of the Poles, and the Polish society is strongly divided. Therefore, it will not be that easy to get support for the constitution. But of course, we know that it's not necessarily up to the society on the day of, let's say, adopting new constitution, but more on the day of the elections in 2027. And as we can see, the Polish society does not necessarily make these predictions for, okay, what might happen if, but it just tries to incidentally ad hoc punish for certain actions or a lack of or a lack thereof. Therefore, I would say that, of course, the elections and strongly won by Law and Justice and Confederacja under Karol Nawrocki's, let's say, leadership in this regard might be enough.
As you said, the future of the Constitution and changes to the Constitution will be decided during the next parliamentary election. Thank you so much, Renata Mieńkowska-Norkiene, political scientist from the University of Warsaw, was my guest. Thank you so much for joining again. And so this would be all for now here on World Talks. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska, and I do hope to see you back here in just a moment for more news and features. See you there.